Voice over IP networks are increasing in popularity and ubiquity. Commonly deployed in military and Department of Defense networks, large enterprises, and call centers, VoIP has revolutionized network-based communications. The convergence of voice with the traditional data network has allowed for inexpensive long-haul communications with fantastic base voice services, such as speech-to-text, interactive voice response, and data retrieval systems. However, this convergence of the traditional network with voice services comes with a price, as the network, which is a traditional attack vector for internet hackers and cybercriminals, now also enables easy access to an enterprise's voice network. In January 2012, the FBI and Scotland Yard coordinated a conference call to discuss a growing cyber threat. A hacktivist group known as Anonymous who attack targets at will and with very little attribution as to the team members. The FBI and Scotland Yard spoke on a VoIP call for 17 minutes. However, within days of the event, the audio of the conference call was posted on Anonymous's website, complete with hacker posturing and chest thumping, while browbeating the authorities for their ineptness.
Gaming site with 32,000 usernames and logins and credit card details, which he's suggesting he's head off. I don't know if that's a job that any of you guys are dealing with, but if it is, we've got a statement, someone admitting to it.
Apparently, VoIP security is not high on the FBI or Scotland Yard's priority list. For many reasons, VoIP is an easy target. Primarily, the complete lack of encryption of the real-time transport protocol and the signaling allows an attacker to listen to conversations. Secondly, VoIP networks are not thoroughly separated on the network from the data network, and the use of a voice-only VLAN on a switch network is not enough to completely isolate VoIP activities. Tertiary attacks include audio injection, signaling attacks, brute force authentication, default credentials on web-based administrative consoles on VoIP phones, and voice spam, referred to as spit. There exists one particularly troublesome attack vector in which the damage of the prior described attacks is multiplied: the insider threat. A malicious user on the VoIP network has the leverage to induce a significant amount of threat to an enterprise VoIP network. The insider threat is the single most difficult challenge to an enterprise's information system. Rogue administrators, scorned workers, and corporate espionage may infiltrate and leverage trust-based systems to their advantage. Various motives include physical damage or theft, financial gain, financial ruin of the company or its personnel, political reasons, and ego boosting. It is this aspect of VoIP security we will explore. Our project will contain three main sections. First, we will detail the technical aspects of the insider, such as what technical details he will need to overcome, the tools at his disposal, and reconnaissance of the attack. Next, we will discuss the desired effect of the attack, which tools were selected, and some technical details about their operation. And finally, we will discuss some technical solutions to defend against VoIP attacks. Phase 1. Motive, technical aspects, and tools. Norman, the profile we selected of the malicious insider for our demonstration, is motivated by money problems and suspects that information concerning the Texas Border Patrol's tactics, techniques, and procedures, along with their location monitoring schedules, would be of major monetary value to persons in the drug smuggling trade. Norman supports IT at the El Paso FBI field office and has frequently heard one of the field agents discussing these details with contacts of the Border Patrol over VoIP and SIP phones. Norman was also a member of a recreational hacker group and knew he was capable of hacking one of these calls with a man-in-the-middle attack. Since he worked at the field office, he had access to the agent's VoIP phone and was easily able to acquire the first piece of information he would need for the attack: the MAC address. In order to avoid network intrusion detection systems, he used an Ethernet LAN tap, referred to as a throwing star, that uses 4 Ethernet ports, 2 of which are wired in between the network connection and the target host. The other 2 ports are for monitoring transmit and receive data. By placing the throwing star between his own VoIP phone and its Ethernet cable, he is able to run Backtrack R2 Hacker Linux distribution on his laptop connected to the transmit monitoring port of the throwing star. Power cycling the phone forces the phone to TFTP the latest config file and register with the SIP registrar. using Wireshark to capture the various traffic packet flows and save them on a USB key. Inspecting a single frame captured during the SIP register, he is able to determine the UDP source and destination ports, username, realm, nonce value, authentication URI, digest authentication response, and algorithm. He now knows the registrar's IP address, SIP signaling, username, realm, the nonce, and the MD5 digest. By spoofing his own desktop VoIP phone, he can stealthily inject a laptop into the VoIP network. He will need to crack his own SIP authentication in order to trick the SIP registrar into registering his laptop's soft phone as the FBI's. He uses Backtrack to sift through the VoIP PCAP to find the file authentication. SIP uses a three-step MD5 hashing method to create a unique authentication string. First, SIP stacks the username, the realm, and the password together. Next, SIP creates an MD5 hash of the registrar. The final step is to hash the first hash, the nonce, and the second hash together, providing a final authentication hash. Since the packet capture in plain text contained the username, realm, and register values, the only thing left to break is the password, which will be done using a brute force password list. Norman is now able to continue on to phase 2 of his plan. This phase of the attack is broken into two pieces. First, Norman must inject his laptop into the FBI's VoIP network surreptitiously, and then he can ARP poison the network and steal the calls processed by the agent's VoIP phone. He boots his laptop off a USB drive with a modified version of Backtrack. He configures a common Linux SIP soft phone, Akiga, as an identical clone of his own VoIP phone using the username, password, and registered IP that he has stole from the prior day's hacking. With his laptop back in line with his VoIP phone and the throwing star, all he needs is the agent's phone's IP address for Norman to ARP poison the phone, which can be obtained from the ARP cache. Norman begins to ARP poison the agent's phone and the SIP registrar. ARP poisoning was an incredibly dangerous attack. At Layer 2, the addressing system uses a simple and easily compromised addressing scheme. He uses the EtherCap tool, which transmits messages designed to adjust the ARP caches of the target machine and repoint their Layer 2 traffic to his laptop so that all traffic to and from the agent's VoIP phone and the SIP registrar are now passing through Norman's laptop. He uses the Wireshark packet sniffer to collect the data from a fake test call he will make to the agent's phone. Wireshark has captured the phone call. He clicks Telephony, VoIP calls. The window lists the VoIP call he had with the agent. Clicking on the call, he chooses Player. A sub-window pops up, and there is a decode button. He clicks it, and Wireshark returns with an error message. Codec cannot be analyzed. The phones are running G.729, which Wireshark cannot decode due to patent restrictions. He modifies the session description protocol RTP AVP field in real time and in both directions, and forces the codec to one of his choosing. A VoIP.filter will trap for any packets on UDP port 5060. Any packet with the RTP AVP 18 or 1818 will be converted to RTP AVP 0 or 00, respectively. The IANA payload number 18 refers to G.729, and IANA payload number 0 is assigned to G.711. Once the codec has been changed, Norman again uses Wireshark to monitor another test call to the agent's phone and sees that the codec has been changed to G.711 PCMU. He lets out a sigh and admires his handiwork. He reflects for a moment. He cannot believe that SIP does not protect its own SDP protocol payload from modification. SDP has no protocol authentication or protections from such an attack. He knew by reading RFC 4566 that SDP was completely open to attack. In particular, Section 7, page 31, clearly states, in some cases, such intermediary systems may modify the session description, for example, to have the contents of the session description match NAT bindings dynamically created. These behaviors are not recommended unless the session description is conveyed in such a manner that allows the intermediary system to conduct proper checks to establish the authenticity of the session description and the authority of its source to establish such communication sessions. Now all he has to do is wait for the FBI and Border Patrol agents to make their normal lunchtime calls. Armed with the dates and locations of the Border Patrol routines, Norman will make Mr. Escobar and his associates very happy men. In the described scenario, the low-level administrator had very little system privileges. He had no login access to the machines he needed, and therefore had to resort to more technical means to gather the information. His motive was financially based, which led to his desperate situation. Our hacker executed a basic series of attacks upon a VoIP system. Protecting an organization or oneself from such attacks is incredibly difficult. Physical access will beat almost all security measures, and our attackers' physical access to the VoIP phones and their Ethernet and power cables are completely indefensible. An insider with physical access will always be able to pull a cable off a unit or power cycle it, potentially putting the unit into an unknown or unstable state, which may increase the ease for compromise. The hacker was able to plug his laptop into the Ethernet cable originally set up for his phone. However, most modern switches support port security to lock down the MAC address of the first device plugged into that port. Had our hacker detected port security, he could have simply flipped his own phone over, read its MAC address, set it on his laptop's LAN adapter, and continued his exploit. Port security only has one chance at locking a port down. One's adversary must never know which MAC address is assigned to the targeted port. The primary defense against VoIP traffic eavesdropping is encryption. In this case, Secure Real-Time Transport Protocol would have helped. SRTP allows for the encryption of the live audio as it passes to the proxy or other user agent. Encrypting the session initiation protocol signaling with Secure SIP will also help counter attacks against the SIP authentication attack our hacker was able to perform. It is very important to note that with physical access, it may be possible to adjust a target's VoIP phone to disable SRTP and SSIP. Also, if the VoIP system is using a pre-shared key, it may be possible to read it from the VoIP phone's menu or web admin page, especially if neither are well protected. Ideally, the phones in the registrar proxy should use X.509 certificates, with a certificate authority certificate and a CA signed user certificate loaded into each phone. The registrar proxy will authenticate the user certificate against the enterprise's CA, as will the VoIP phone check that the registrar's proxy signed certificate is valid using the CA certificate. This mutual authentication is very strong and difficult to defeat. There is the possibility of a man-in-the-middle attack if a hacker is able to generate or steal his own server certificate signed by the enterprise's CA. The common protection strategy for this is to explicitly protect the CA's private key by taking it offline, thus keeping technical key theft at bay. Stealing a signed server certificate is also limited by assigning a password to each certificate created and applying a two-person integrity check to the password, meaning two individuals must type in their piece of the password and never share it with each other. When the server certificates need to be loaded, two individuals are required to make it happen. Collusion probability is reduced as more individuals are added to the TPI system.